As you know, Daya and I recently returned from visiting Ananda centers in the U.S., our retreat center in Italy, where people from all over Europe come to visit and also live together. And from all of those same countries who, in my parents' generation, were all at war with one another. And it was very interesting to see Ananda teachings from different practice, from people from different backgrounds, and also to compare that with our devotees here in Delhi. Visitors would sometimes praise the Ananda devotees to Swami Kriyananda and say how calm and loving and serviceful and happy and thoughtful these people were. And Swamiji said that if you had met just one person like that, you might think, well, now he's a remarkable person. Maybe he eats bran for breakfast. But when you see a whole group of people expressing those qualities, you think it must not be who they are, but what they do that make them that way. We've got a little bit of echo here. I think maybe there, that's better. And this, we might say, is the spirit of Ananda. And what do devotees who followed these teachings for years, from even in different countries, what do they have in common? And if their lives can be transformed, it tells you something about what these teachings and attitudes and practices can do for anyone. It can tell you of a new person who walks in the door today, who's eager for truth and knowledge, and is like you can rather predict what he would be like in a few years from now if he keeps practicing these things and keeps thinking in these ways. And everyone who meditates with whatever technique will feel the benefits, will feel all of those physical benefits, the reduced blood pressure and stress and pain. We'll feel more calmness, we'll feel happiness. And these are universal. Someone who practices Hatha Yoga and doesn't meditate will also feel some of those same benefits and qualities. And with the same spiritual teachings, different teachers, different schools, different ashrams take a different approach, emphasize perhaps devotion and bhakti, emphasize seva, karma yoga, emphasize philosophy or intense spiritual practices. And that same universal truth is also expressed. It's the same truth, but it's expressed in a particular way with followers of Yoganandaji and Swami Kriyananda. And so let's explore that a little bit. This was a topic that we were given this week, and I was happy we were given it because it's an unusual one. And it's interesting that it was America that Ananda was first founded in a big way. America is well known for spiritual progress. For material progress. Not well known for spiritual progress. And not well known also the incredible generosity of individuals, of giving kindness to strangers, of the amount of one's income that is given to charity, of this sense of civic duty, this sense of cooperation. And in the very earliest times, the first settlers in America in a new land, they had to cooperate. They had to harvest their crops together. They had to form communities just for survival. And somehow that instinct, that trait, has just continued and became an important part of the beginning of Ananda Sangha. And once this principle of cooperation was well established in America, then the European devotees, when we started work there, they understood it. They naturally also flowed into that same, expressing that same quality. And likewise, I see that same quality in all of you here in Delhi, that once we see the example, then we see the results, and we can follow it in our own lives. Another Ananda trait, you might say, is sincere daily meditation, no matter how long, is like the oil that lubricates, that makes our outward lives and our inner lives harmonious. Years ago, I was part of a monastery at Ananda village, and very often when a monk came to us with a certain problem, and it could be spiritual or emotional or something with work or something physical, we would ask them, now just how often are you coming to the group meditations that we have every day? And inevitably he would say, well, not so much lately, for this reason and for that reason. And once he started again to go to those daily meditations, whatever problem it was, amazingly faded away in such a simple solution. Another aspect, Swamiji once was visiting a man in Canada, and the man was saying that, during the day I have to run my business, and then I'm a businessman. But as soon as I come home at night, and he was showing Swamiji his beautiful meditation room, I come here, I change my clothes, I meditate, and it's like that's the beginning of my day. That's my real life. And Swamiji said, what a shame, what a waste that this man, all those long hours at work, he was not putting spiritual principles to work. He had wasted all of that time. And so it is putting our meditation into action, into applying it to our daily lives, to our practical daily problems, is also a particular trait of Yoganandaji and of Swamiji and Ananda. Swamiji said that man can't create heaven on earth, for heaven is in God. But our duty is to reflect heaven in all that we do, all that we create. Simple beauty outwardly and great inner harmony. Praying to God before our activities and consciously feeling God as our companion in every endeavor. And when you have a group of people who are meditating, who are consciously improving themselves, when they come together, that interaction is loving, that meeting is harmonious. And I see that in those of you who are serving most here. We don't have to be together all the time to feel that sense of harmony, of similar purpose. And this is spiritual family. And divine inspiration comes not only in silent prayer, but in the prayer of labor that is lovingly offered up to God. Yoganandaji would pray, I will reason, I will, I will act. But you, God, you guide my reason, my will, and activity to the right path in everything. And with this attitude, our work becomes seva. Our seva becomes worship. And we begin to feel God's presence in everything that we do. And the more that we see God in everything, the more we see him in everyone. The more we become friends with God in everyone. And another Ananda trait, you might say, is devotion, self-surrender, humility, and developing these qualities. Loosening the grip that the ego has on us by offering ourselves lovingly to God as his child with love and willingness and positive expectation that he will guide us to the right path in everything. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to read a passage from The New Path written by Swami Kriyananda. Lord Krishna is depicted as a boy playing his flute by the banks of the river Yamuna, calling his playmates away from worldly pursuits to the divine search within. All men hear in their souls, whether consciously or unconsciously, this call to divine awareness. Modern society, alas, is committed to an almost diametrically opposite principle. It firmly believes that the more one owns and the more experiences one has of outward diversity, entertainment, and excitement, the happier he will be. Consumerism is propounded as a moral value. Spend more so that there will be more jobs and more things produced, which will enable you to spend even more. It is not wrong per se, of course, to possess the conveniences modern civilization makes available to us. What is wrong is the amount of energy that gets directed towards these outward goals at the expense of inner peace and higher awareness. Human nature has not changed. Those who ignore its guiding principles pay all the usual penalties, whether as restless and unhappy camel drivers or as restless and unhappy jet airplane pilots. What is needed is a change in our priorities. The principles taught by Paramahansa Yogananda will, if adopted, correct the spiritual imbalances of our times. The spiritual energy that is Ananda Sangha extends far beyond any physical boundaries. Thousands find in Ananda's example the inspiration and the practical direction for spiritualizing their own lives. Ananda provides people with a sense of spiritual family, a sense which serves them as a bulwark in times of trial and gives them encouragement and shared inspiration in times of joy. May all men learn to live in peace, brotherhood, and harmony, wherever their paths lead outwardly. For divine peace is possible only when people place God and spiritual values first in their lives.
I'll also say a few words about the spirit of Ananda. Keshava was talking about the man who said to Swamiji one time, actually, I think wasn't it Swami Chidananda?
I'm sorry.
Was it Swami Chidananda who said that to Swami?
Said what?
It's not just one. Never mind. Sorry. The person that said to Swamiji, your people are also kind, and Swamiji said, well, maybe if you've just seen one, but it's really, it's what they're doing that make them this way. It's the Ananda's members, it's what they're doing. So I kind of thought more deeply about that. Keshava spoke about it. But then when you think of it, everyone here who has a meditation practice, we put a sustained amount of concentrated energy into our spiritual practice. And that sustained amount of energy uplifts our magnetism, our consciousness. When you think of the scientific part of the spiritual path and our chakras and the prana that flows through us, when we put sustained energy here at the spiritual eye and draw energy regularly up and down the spine, we are uplifting our sort of the weight of our spiritual vibration, and it just keeps lifting and lifting, and a magnetism grows in these upper spinal centers, and we start to go there. Our energy begins to magnetize there throughout the day, and the longer we keep up this practice, the more our energy wants to go there. And then we add to it the attunement to a realized master. We add to that the joy of walking a spiritual path together with spiritual friends who are also joyful and also calm and also at peace. And you add to that the expansion of awareness and identification that we receive when we serve others, when we think of others. You know, my little self has become an expanded self because my reality is increasing to include those of my Guru Bhais, those of attendees to the spiritual fair, those of anybody who come. So in all these ways, our identity is expanding, our calmness, our peace, our joy is expanding, and scientifically, our actual chakras and magnetism is uplifting and reinforcing all our spiritual goals, and it's becoming who we are. And so I think that's also why we're all like this, and it's not just one or two of us, because we're all doing that same thing, and it's all having the same magnetic effect on all of us. I'm just going to bring up a couple of other things particular about Ananda that I could think of when I was thinking about it last night and this morning. Swami has always said that people are more important than things. So one example is if, we desperately need an accountant or a CPA to help us with our administration, and we happen to have a CPA very close within our midst. If we want to say, please, help us with this work, but we know it won't benefit them spiritually, we don't ask them to do it. We either hire outside or we find another way to make it work. But Swami has never given somebody a place of responsibility and position if it wasn't going to be for their spiritual growth. And also, if somebody is a little slow in getting something done, usually it's just kindness and harmony that prevails. It's not about any particular material goal that needs to be attained in a certain amount of time. Kindness, empathy, compassion are always much more important than getting the thing done. So people are more important than things. Keshava mentioned harmony. Another aspect of harmony and the reason why it's so important within Ananda is that, and Swamiji tells us, and Master tells us, that our relationships are relationships that go way beyond this lifetime. And the energy exchange that we're having with each other, and also, of course, includes your family members and your other close people close to you, the energy exchange that you're having with them will live on beyond the span of this lifetime. And whatever the situation is that may be causing an argument, the situation is not nearly as important, because that situation will come and go. But the relationship and the energy between the relationship will continue. So the harmony that we express with each other, that we feel for each other, that joy, that love, that help, that compassion, kindness that we feel, that's the bob that we carry forward, and that's what we want to carry forward. And since we have sort of been all together in the astral world before, and we're going to be all together in the astral world again, we want to carry that harmony through. And so Swami has almost said harmony is almost the first rule. So things that happen at Ananda sometimes, situations between people, with a community of people living together in Europe and America, things happen. People live in close proximity, relationships change, people that were together are no longer together, you're around them, and things can get very awkward and difficult. And Swamiji would always, let's say if there was a situation like that and there was a breakup from a romantic couple, let's say, he would do as much as he can to bring them together again at the same table for dinner, or cook together in the kitchen, or many different ways to just let them get over whatever emotional reaction they were having, and learn to rise above it and see the highest in each other and get back to that place of harmony again. So that is very, very important. Yata Dharma Tata Jaya, where there is Dharma, there is victory. Swami wrote a whole course about that, the Material Success Through Yoga Principles course. And Swamiji thought of that course when he was in the hospital after almost dying of undiagnosed diabetes here in India. He had been recording 10 to 12 TV shows every day. As soon as we landed in India, this brings up another important point, if the energy is right, everything will work out. It's like on the material plane, it will never be perfect. But if the energy is moving in the right direction, if people are serving in the right spirit, the energy will flow where it needs to go. God, Master, Babaji, they're the ones guiding this work. As long as we're putting out the right energy, the energy will flow to where it needs to go. So when we first landed, when Swamiji decided to come to India, when he was 77 years old, there was no money, nobody knew what he was doing. It's like, no, let's all go to India. And so a handful of people came with him. We were some of them, and it was difficult landing in India after never living here before, and it was hot, and we were in Gurgaon, and the power was constantly going out. And in 1 week, we fried 6 computers, because we were just plugging them into the wall. And so the power would go off and come back on, and there would go another computer. And so during this chaotic time, Swamiji got very, very, very sick. We carried him out of the house in a stretcher, and in the hospital, a doctor came up and said, I'm having trouble staying dharmic. My son needs to go to college, and how does one keep their principles? And so he wrote this course. While he was like almost on his deathbed, he's answering this guy and he's trying to counsel him. And then Keshava was sitting in the hospital room with them, and Keshava used to be his secretary, so he said, Keshava, get a pen. And so he wrote down the 26 chapter titles for this Material Success course. But again, Swami didn't have in his mind exactly what was going to happen when we landed in India. It was just put out as much energy as possible, as much positive, spiritual energy as possible, and Master and Babaji will guide where it needs to go. And so the same is true for this upcoming spiritual fair. For those of you who don't know, we have a spiritual fair that's going to be here in this property, in this ashram, on the 23rd of September, which is a Sunday. The directors of Ananda Worldwide, Nayaswamis Jyotish and Devi, will be also participating in it with all of us. And when we got back from being abroad in the last week or so, we had a meeting and we were talking about the spiritual fair, which is now only 6 weeks away, and there's so much to do, and we just started listing the things we needed to do, and it was just, okay, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And on one hand, the logical mind looks at it and says, we can't do all of this in time, or we can't. And on the other hand, we said, no, we know that if we put out this positive energy, we know that we can start this flow of expansive, serviceful energy, and as this magnetic flow begins to move forward in a positive direction, then our Guru Bhais will jump in that flow with us and help carry us along. And so what's interesting is that the people that end up growing the most during the spiritual fair are, of course, the ones who serve. We have so many people from the public who come, and they are also here to grow. And we also pray that everyone during a big event like that receives what they need to receive. But time and again, we have found that those who expand their awareness and expand their identity to include all those that they will be serving and all that those that they're serving along with are the ones that grow the most, and that open themselves to have that energy of Yogananda Ji, of Babaji, of Swami Kriyananda, and basically the spiritual truth of God and Gurus flowing through us. They're the ones who are most deeply blessed because, as Master said, the channel is blessed by that which flows through it. And so we just need to ask ourselves, why are we here? For self-realization and to transcend the ego and to serve as much as we can. And that's sort of the way of Ananda. So God bless you.